Now, as we know, the Prime Minister has such a connection to normal people. I mean, it's really special. I mean, here he is just interacting at the most normal and not at all cringy way with the Olympic athletes. There was the little cutaway of Toto. Oh, it was beautiful. But of course, while all of that great distraction of the past couple of weeks was happening, the reality in people's lives is they can actually do two things at once. And while watching the Olympics at night or in the morning, they were paying attention to what was happening with the Reserve Bank and inflation during the day. Guess what? New poll just before Parliament comes back, and Labor is in a world of trouble. They are being marked down specifically on economic management, but it's even worse than that. If you have a look at the latest polls via the 9 newspapers and the Resolve Political Monitor, the ALP is down 4 points. 4 points since the last federal election. That would be multiple seats clearly lost. We'll find out from Newspoll either tonight or next week about just how many. But we are definitely at this stage, if these numbers are correct, that is minority government territory. Because, of course, it's the Teals that block the Libs being able to get anywhere near it. That said, when you automatically go and you add, say, the Greens to the Labor Party, well, you could probably say that people who are One Nation or United Australia Party supporters right now, and that'd be another 8%, on top of the Liberal vote, gets the Liberal Party deep into the 40s. And that would be enough to start to flip a few seats. That would be enough to see something seismic happen at the election. Now, again, until the data tells me what's happening with the Teals, maths is maths. But the government being able to hold on to its own majority off these numbers would be impossible. And the government's going to have some sort of a massive comeback. But it's hard to see a comeback being led by this Prime Minister. Now, of course, there could be another catastrophe, or there could be a global pandemic, or something that's going to mean that, the Prime Minister goes from, gags on the internet to sort of consoler-in-chief, and suddenly his numbers go up through the roof. But if they continue being marked on their policies, they're going to start going backwards and backwards fast. Because have a look at this. When people who are asked by the Channel 9 newspapers, so Sydney Morning Herald, Age, Brisbane Times, 51% say the Prime Minister's performance is poor or very poor. Just a third, remember 33 and a third of people believe the Prime Minister is doing a good or very good job. And for the second poll this year, Peter Dutton outperforms Anthony Albanese as the preferred Prime Minister. Now, those that will try to pretend these numbers don't matter and don't say, well, it's Queensland that's over-skewing anything, well, at what point do they start to call this a trend? Because what is even more devastating than the numbers are the comments that people gave to the pollsters while they were giving their answers about good job, bad job, who would you vote on which particular issue do you like this party or that party. Now, of course, with a third of people, there are some positive comments, but have a look at this stuff and match it up to what we have been talking about since day one. Day one. You and I knew this bloke was going to be a flop. We copped it deeply at the time. Well, thankfully, people are now starting to wake up and start to speak as honestly as you and I did a couple of years ago. Because have a look. Things can't continue like this. The cost of living increases are stupid. Albanese's coming across like a king, a bit elitist and condescending. I don't think the federal government is controlling the economy at all. All talk, no action. Crime is out of control and they're not even admitting to it. Doesn't have the detail to hand when he's answering questions. He's not across things. Our country is in turmoil with crime and living costs, but he's missing in action. We're under so much financial stress and the government isn't lifting a finger. Now, again, I would love to sit here and tell you that Anthony Albanese is going to be a one-term Prime Minister because of the number of Teals and where they are and the makeup of their electorates and how they voted in the referendum last year. The likelihood of most of those flipping back to the Liberal Party is unlikely. If I see any data that proves that, then I'll gladly present it to you. But until we know that data, I'm not going to sit here and fill you full of false hope. But one thing that is seemingly inevitable is the government losing control and having to go cap in hand on every single thing they want to do after the election for the next 3 years. In the lower house, as they will have to in the upper house. In the upper house, it's the Greens and Lambie and Pocock who have all the power. In the lower house, it may well end up being Victorian Teals, as well as a collection of other people who may well not have even been elected to the parliament who will end up in power. Now, of course, all of these people will be asked during an election, well, after an election, which way are you going to choose? They will all pretend that they are not going to make a choice, despite the fact that statistically that looks like where we're headed. Now, again, I don't want to get the cart before the horse, and the election seems to be months away, but right now the Prime Minister is in trouble. And he's in trouble because he set a false expectation of his Prime Ministership, that power prices would be lower, they are higher, that he would deal with the cost of living, which is worse. And the reality when it comes to the Reserve Bank is there's not a day goes by where they don't tell us nothing gets better for about another 6 months. And that's the best case scenario. So keep your eyes peeled, because I will, for the media types that are trying to give the free advice to the government on how it can save itself from itself. But this is the same government that gives itself not one, not two, but 3 pay rises since the last election. This is the government that took $1,500 off 10 million people to deal with the cost of living. These are the people who, when it came to tax cuts, delivered too little, too late to the people who truly need it. And these are the people who, again, when it comes to power prices, think that you will magically forget what the promise was because they may eventually get around to sending you $25 a month and cutting that off your bill, which is increasing by way more than $25 a month. So some of the media types that are trying to find a way out for the Prime Minister here. 5 issues that threaten to derail the Albanese government before the next election, with plenty of ideas, by the way, about how they can work around some of these things, even the ABC. Some Labor voters are disappointed in the PM, but there's still time to steady the ship. Watch the free advice, because these people do not like the idea of a comfortable relationship with this Prime Minister, the people around him, the bubble within the bubble, being disrupted. But it looks like some people will notice that the Emperor, not quite as clothed as he used to be.